Hi, everybody, and welcome to Big Joe's Journal. This is one cold day. It's the 15th of March, which by tradition is called the Ides of March. And, a lot going on. First of all, tonight in the city of Rutland, the Board of Aldermen is going to reorganize. And Matt Whitcomb will probably be reelected board president. Now, whether Sharon Davis takes a shot at it again, I don't know. She may have counted the votes and figured that, she needs at least 6 to win. But the younger people that are on the board, and the board is getting younger as the years go on, will probably have the majority, and I would imagine Matt Whitcomb will be reelected. And Mayor Allaire begins his 3rd term. And, he'll announce his political appointments. Some of them are already in office, like the city clerk, Henry Heck. He's got to make some other appointments. One, the zoning director, commissioner of public works. I would imagine that will be coming up in another couple of weeks, so he plans to appoint there. And in the Board of Aldermen, the various committees will be set up. And everybody will have their committee assigned. I imagine by now, it's rather difficult, say, for Matt Whitcomb. He wants to be president again, but he hasn't been elected yet. But he probably already has his committee assignments figured out and who's going to serve where. And if he's reelected, which he will be, he may hand out the committee assignments tonight. If not, it'll be a little bit later. But right now, you'd have to mail them to them because they don't meet in the aldermanic chambers. They meet over Zoom. And that's something that's probably going to go on for a little while longer. So there is a number of places. I know it's down at Mill River. They're asking somebody in the town of Clarendon to step up and serve on the local school board. There's a vacancy there. Nobody ran for the office, and I'm sure somebody will apply and be appointed. I wouldn't be surprised if former Representative David Potter applied for that job. David would be a good man on the board down there. Did a great job in the legislature. And he's a person that is dedicated to public service, and I wouldn't be surprised if he applied, and if he did, he would be appointed. Well, there are 3 celebrations coming up this week. First of all, one took place on Sunday when we switched from standard time over to daylight saving time. And that's a sign that spring is on the way, and it's just right around the corner, although you'd never know it today because the weather is wicked cold out there. But spring is right around the corner. President Biden signed in probably the biggest bailout in the history of the country to get us back on our feet after the COVID-19 crisis. And there's something good for everybody. Unfortunately, when it passed the Senate, it passed by 1 vote. That vote, of course, was cast by the vice president. As you know, the Senate is 50-50, Democrat, Republican. All the Republicans voted against it. All the Democrats voted for it. So Vice President Harris cast the deciding vote, and it passed. And President Biden, the First Lady Jill Biden, and the Vice President, Kamala Harris, and her husband, the second gentleman, are going to start campaigning around the country, urging people to get their shots. I've had my 2, being in the upper bracket, and everything came off smoothly. When I was having my second shot down at the Holiday Inn this past week, And most of the people down there were getting their first shot. They were school teachers. And they would come in and get their shot, then they'd, after you have your shot, you have to wait about half an hour or so, or not half an hour, but 15, 20 minutes to see if there's any after effect. And as I was waiting, those 15 minutes or so after I'd had my shot, I could hear them talking about what they were going to do for the school year, fourth grade, fifth grade, and so forth. And, this school year is just in tatters. A number of schools are going to try to reopen the 1st of May, but then they're going to be getting out in June. And that is a situation that we're going to talk about. I have a few ideas on it, not that anybody listens to my ideas. But I think one thing that would raise a huge protest is to hold everybody back a year and get a full year of education in. Get the kids caught up to where they should be. Right now, if you gave them a standardized test, you'd find out that all across the country, our students are underperforming. It's because they haven't had a decent school year. And as I said before, we've got to look at some changes in it, maybe reversing, flip-flopping the school year, beginning in March and wrapping it up around Thanksgiving or a little bit after. But you can't go through 2 or 3 years like we've had right now, where they're in 2 days a week and then they're watching on TV or whatever. We're going to be handing out diplomas that really aren't going to mean anything this year. They mean very little. Say, well, you've completed it, but what have you completed? What have you got? What do you got to show for it? Are you prepared to go to college? Are you prepared to go into the job market? No. So it's something we're going to have to take a look at. Well, let's talk about this week. 3 big dates on this week. The day we're taping the show, which is the 15th of March, it's the Ides of March. The 17th, which will be Wednesday, St. Patrick's Day, and Friday the 19th, which will be St. Joseph the Worker Day. The Ides of March. A few years ago, this was the day your income taxes were due. That has been extended back to the 15th of April now. Thank the Lord, because I haven't done mine yet. But the Ides of March are famous under Julius Caesar. Now back in ancient Roman times, we had the first triumvirate. Caesar had pretty well conquered what is now Western Europe. Spain, France, parts of Germany, England. He hadn't ventured into Ireland yet, but he had pretty much of Western continental Europe and what is now known as England under his control. His partner Pompey had gone the other direction. He conquered Greece and Egypt and through what is now the Middle East. And the third partner was Cyprian Africanus, had pretty well subdued North Africa. But Caesar had ambitions. Rome at that time was what we call a republic. They had a Senate, and they had a res publica, the House of Representatives. The upper crust, of course, were in the Senate, and the lower class people, if you want to call them that, were in the House of Representatives. And heading up the government, they had what they call 2 proconsuls, who served for a term of 2 years. And they were elected on alternate years. One guy 1 year, one guy the next. Well, Caesar, being a military power, decided that he wanted to be dictator. He wanted to be the emperor. And to do this, he had to get rid of some of his buddies. Well, Africanus wasn't really interested in in coming to Rome. He just would stay in North Africa. But Pompey challenged him. And Pompey, Caesar turned his army and marched back in toward Rome. Pompey warned him not to cross the Rubicon, which was a river near Rome. He said, your territory is north of there, mine is the rest. But Caesar did cross. And in the battle that followed, of course, Caesar won. Pompey was killed, and his army defeated. That left Caesar, the numero general in Rome at that time, and he decided he's got the army behind him. He's going to eliminate the republic. He's going to have himself declared emperor. Well, in the Senate, where a number of senators are very concerned about that, concerned about anyone coming in and eliminating the idea of the proconsuls and setting themselves up as an emperor. And so on the 15th of March, Caesar was due to go before the Senate and tell them they were out of business. He was taken over. But a number of senators, I believe there were about 7 altogether, including 2 very prominent senators, one an individual named Cassius and a friend of Julius Caesar's, Brutus, were very, very concerned about it. They decided, well, got to eliminate him. He's too much of a danger to our republic. And so on the Ides of March, when Caesar arrived to give a speech and tell the Senate, and also tell the House of Representatives that Rome was no longer a republic, it was going to become a dictatorship. Old Julius was going to be the emperor. Didn't work out that way. Senators put together a conspiracy. And when Caesar arrived, they lured him away from his bodyguards, and of course, as you know, they stabbed him to death. And the famous line when Caesar looked at his buddy Brutus, and he said, you also, Brutus? Et tu, Brute? And that is what the Ides of March are known for. Well, what happened, of course, Caesar's nephew, Mark Antony, and his stepson, who was Augustus Caesar, took command of Caesar's army. And Brutus and Cassius had to flee for their lives, as did the other senators who took part in the so-called conspiracy. What they did, they took the remnant of what was Pompey's army to try and slow down Mark Antony and Caesar Augustus. But the army of Mark Antony was too powerful. The result was Cassius was killed at a battle, actually in what probably is now part of Iraq. And Brutus fled to what is now Tehran in Iran. And as the armies of Mark Antony and Augustus Caesar approached, he committed suicide. And of course, it continues on where Augustus and Mark Antony soon parted company. Augustus got the upper hand on that, had himself declared emperor. He accomplished what his stepfather wanted to do. And Rome became an empire with an emperor rather than a council, the Senate and the House of Representatives. And of course, this lasted, roughly about a little over 300, 400 years. By that time, the Roman Empire had started to crumble from within. And after 500 years, it was just a matter of where it virtually totally collapsed. The second big celebration, of course, is St. Patrick's Day. And normally, there's a lot of celebrating, especially among our Irish brothers and sisters, and people that really aren't Irish, but they're Irish that day. And it's known for its party and celebration and all the rest of it. Well, this year that's not going to happen, of course, because of the COVID-19. I'm sure there will be parties here, there, and everywhere. But for the most part, there won't be the big celebrations they've had in years past. For example, the big St. Patty's Day parade in New York is canceled. The one in South Boston, which is a large collection of the children of Irish immigrants, the one in South Boston is canceled, the parade and the official parties and all that. And the traditional visit of the Prime Minister of Ireland to the United States has also been canceled, and it will be done via electronic devices this year. President Biden, who is Irish, very much so, will exchange greetings with the Prime Minister of Ireland. St. Patrick, not too much is known of his where he came from. St. Patrick was not Irish. And you're saying, holy Moses, what are you talking about? Well, St. Patrick was born either in England or France. And he was a shepherd by trade. And he was captured by Irish pirates. Irish pirates used to be a big problem back in those days. For some people, certain Irish pirates are still a problem. But in those days, around the North Sea and the English Channel and all that, they were a problem. And they took hostages. And one of the hostages they took was Patrick. Now, they either took him out of England or they took him out of France. And he went to Ireland, and he tended sheep for a number of years. And during his captivity there, he began to have a great sympathy and a great understanding of the Irish personality. So once he was liberated, he decided he wanted to take these pagans and to turn them into Christians. Well, to do that, he studied for and was ordained a priest. And he managed to be assigned by the Pope as a minister back to Ireland, where he'd been served his captivity for a number of years. And he is attributed with converting the Irish, the Celtics, who were a very, very fierce tribe, from paganism into Christianity. One of the things that the old Celts used to have before their conversion to Christianity, when the king was old and he was about to die, the oldest son, who would be the crown prince and the next successor, had to kill his father. And he usually did that by stabbing him and draining some of his blood and all that. It was a Celtic ceremony, very paganistic. But the idea was the royal blood, the royal Celtic blood, would pass down from the father to the son. And of course, he also knew that when his time came, his son would do the same to him. So an old tradition that went out. Ireland, of course, when it was converted to Christianity, it would have another division, and that would be under the Protestant Reformation. There was a section of Ireland, Northern Ireland, that more or less was adopted by England after England broke away from Rome, and the Reformation took place there. King James II, who was Catholic, was driven from the throne by his daughter, Queen Mary, and her husband, who was Dutch, who was King William and Mary, and they ruled jointly. In other words, it was the husband and wife, equal footing. James went to Spain to get help from Spain. And he was going to take back his throne, take back England. And so he landed in Ireland with a large army of Spanish, Portuguese mercenaries. And he was met there by a large British army under the command of King William. And at the Battle of Boyne, James was defeated, and he was assassinated. And the result was that the idea of James returning to the throne came to an end, and Protestantism was very firmly established in England. But Ireland, the majority of Ireland, remained loyal to Catholicism. There was a section in the northeastern part of the island, which was called the Orange State, because William and Mary were of the House of Orange in Holland, Royal House in Holland. And Northern Ireland, of course, became separate from Southern Ireland. And there's been constant military conflict over the centuries between Ireland and Northern Ireland. Well, with Great Britain withdrawing from the European Compact, of course, Northern Ireland goes with them. The rest of Ireland still remains part of the European community. And conflicts have started again between the regular Ireland and northeastern Ireland. There have been a few minor skirmishes, nothing like there used to be when there were massacres. When one group of Protestant would massacre a group of Catholics, and the Catholics would return the favor and so forth. None of it on that scale. But there are a few minor skirmishes, and the question is, how is this going to be resolved? Because now Northern Ireland is not part of the European community, because they left when England and Scotland left. There's a movement in Scotland that wants to separate from England and rejoin the European community. So, problems over in the UK. The UK may not be so united as they would like the world to feel. You know, Great Britain, they were very proud to call themselves Great Britain. Lately, to try to promote unity, they're calling themselves the UK, the United Kingdom. And the royal family right now, once again, is in the news. Prince Harry and his bride, Meghan, are now living in the United States, and Meghan is saying how badly she was abused while she was in England. The royal family say, well, that's a lot of bull. Well, personally, I think the royal family are a bunch of freeloaders. They get good fat salaries, They have to appear at a few ceremonies, spend most of their life traveling around the world, playing polo. Elizabeth's husband, 99 years old now, he likes to drive a wagon with pulled by 2 to 4 horses. That's nice, you know, if you spend the rest of your life as a playboy. But they're more or less freeloading on the taxpayer. And there's been some talk that maybe it's time that the royal family were put to work, but there's been talk of that before and it hasn't happened yet. Meanwhile, old Queen Lizzie keeps right on going. Prince Charles wonders when the old lady's going to die so he can be king before his son William replaces him. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. Personally, I think little old Meghan, I think she's a troublemaker from the beginning. And the royal family is not known for their brilliance. Most of them are dumb as rocks. And I think Harry is one of the... William might have a little sense, but his brother Harry, I think, is a total loser. But we'll see what happens. So that is St. Paddy's Day. It's rather interesting, you know, that while Ireland celebrates St. Patrick's Day, there's bigger celebrations in the United States and Canada of St. Paddy's Day than there is in Ireland. The old traditions. You know, the Irish immigrants came over here and they passed that tradition onto their children, and it's adopted by other people. It was one of the, it used to be, it's not going to be this year, but it used to be one of the busiest and most financially rewarding days for local bars across the country. As you know, our Irish people have a habit of liking to quench their thirst with the suds, and a few brawls break out and so forth and so on. But it's not going to happen this year. And it's one of the things that COVID-19 has put the brakes on, put the clamps on. And in a way, it's too bad. Third big feast ought to be on Friday the 19th, and that's the feast of St. Joseph the Worker. St. Joseph, as many of you know, was the foster father of Jesus, the husband of Mary, the mother of Jesus. And he was employed as a carpenter. He was a descendant, direct descendant of the great Jewish king, King David. And you don't know too much of Joseph's background outside of the fact that his role in history, if you will, as a foster father of God, we don't know when he died, but we know he died before Jesus was crucified. Jesus himself was trained by his foster father to be a carpenter. And consequently, because of that, St. Joseph is the patron of workers. He's referred to as St. Joseph the Provider, because as the head of the family of Jesus and Mary, he had to provide for them, earn income. He's also known as the laborer or the worker, because of the fact he was blue collar. And he was not rich. We know that from reading the New Testament. They were struggling, get by as a family. But for 30 years, as you know, Jesus himself was a carpenter. He only was a minister for 3 years. And so with that, I wish you all a very happy St. Patty's Day, and spring is coming. Get your shots, wear your mask. May Almighty God bless these United States of America. And we'll see you all next week.